The galaxy had seen countless warriors, champions from dozens of star systems, each claiming to be the strongest. They had come to the Karvath arena seeking glory, eager to prove that their species could dominate all others. But today, the arena buzzed with a different kind of excitement, a quiet curiosity that ran through the crowd like electricity. A human had stepped forward, a species that few had taken seriously, and yet one that everyone secretly wondered about. The human's name was Captain Elias Riker. He was not the tallest or the strongest of humans, nor did he wear any armor that gleamed with alien metals or have weapons that hummed with strange energy. He looked, at first glance, ordinary. His uniform was simple, built for function rather than display, and his eyes were steady, calm, yet alert. Around him, the other champions of the arena had already begun sizing him up, smirks and snickers painted across their alien faces. And among those faces, one stood out with absolute certainty: Princess Saranya of the Vorthian Empire. She was known across dozens of star systems for her unmatched skill in combat, her reflexes honed to near superhuman levels, and a strategic mind that few could match. Her long limbs moved with grace and precision, and her armor glimmered under the arena's bright lights, reflecting the pride of a species that had never known defeat. To Saranya, the human before her was a joke, a curiosity, nothing more. "You won't last a minute against me, human," she said, her voice a melodic, commanding sound that echoed across the platform. Her tone carried no malice, only the confidence of someone who had never faced real danger that could rival her. The crowd responded with gasps and murmurs, half in awe of her beauty, half in fear of her reputation. Elias did not flinch. He simply studied her, noticing the way she shifted her weight, the tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes were trained on his every move. He knew she was skilled, more skilled than most. But he also knew something else. She had not met anyone like him before. The arena's announcer's voice boomed across the vast dome. "Champions, prepare yourselves. The duel will begin in 3, 2, 1. She moved first, a blur of motion, launching toward the human with a strike designed to end the match immediately. Elias stepped back, letting her momentum carry her past him. The crowd gasped. In the arena, a misstep could be fatal, yet the human moved with a calm that almost seemed unnatural. Saranya struck again and again, faster than any normal eye could follow, yet each attack met air or the human's minimal but precise deflection. The first minute passed, then the second, and the crowd, expecting a swift victory for the princess, began whispering in disbelief. How could a human survive this? Saranya's confidence, once unshakable, began to show cracks. She tried a spinning kick aimed at the human's side, a move that had ended many challengers before. Elias shifted, letting the strike glance past him harmlessly, and countered with a simple push of her wrist that, while not powerful enough to harm her, disrupted her balance just enough to make her pause. The arena erupted in excitement. The humans in the audience, few as they were, cheered quietly, knowing that their champion had not just survived, he had endured. And Saranya's expression, once full of amusement, now carried something else: curiosity. Elias did not attack immediately. Instead, he observed her, watching the patterns of her strikes, the subtle adjustments in her balance, the way she anticipated his movements. He was learning her style in real time. And for the first time, Saranya realized that her opponent was not reckless. He was calculating, adapting, surviving. Her strikes became faster, more complex, but Elias met them with calm awareness. Every missed attack frustrated her, not because she could not land a blow, but because each time she failed, the human seemed to grow stronger in resolve. The arena had never seen anything like it. Champions often faltered when overwhelmed, but humans, she was beginning to see, had a stubbornness that was different from any other species she had faced. Saranya adjusted her approach. She tried a feint, a trick move she had used countless times to end matches before they began. Elias reacted without hesitation, anticipating the feint, and for the first time in her life, Saranya realized she had underestimated him. The crowd gasped again, this time in awe rather than excitement. The battle was no longer a simple show of strength. It was a demonstration of something deeper. Minutes passed, each filled with the clash of alien precision against human adaptability. Saranya's attacks were relentless, and yet the human endured. He was not the fastest, not the strongest, not even armed like she was. But he had something else: resilience, intelligence, and a presence of mind that allowed him to turn her strengths into opportunities to survive. The princess, once supremely confident, began to sweat despite her calm facade. Each strike she launched was met with a counter or evasion that forced her to rethink, to adapt. The human was teaching her something without even speaking, a lesson in unpredictability, endurance, and the kind of strength that could not be measured in muscle alone. The crowd leaned forward, entirely absorbed. There was no longer any question of who would win. The real question had become, how long could this human survive? And more importantly, how far could he push the princess beyond her expectations? Saranya's movements grew sharper, more precise, but with a subtle hesitation that even she could not hide. Elias had survived the initial onslaught, and with each passing moment, he seemed more aware of her patterns, more capable of avoiding the devastating attacks that had felled countless others. Finally, after several more minutes of intense exchange, Elias made a subtle move, not to attack, but to force the princess to overextend. Saranya lunged with a powerful strike aimed to end the duel, and Elias sidestepped, guiding her momentum past him. The human's understanding of physics, timing, and human endurance allowed him to survive what should have been a decisive blow. For the first time, the princess paused completely, taking a step back and breathing steadily. She had faced many challengers, many who had boasted their strength, their skill, or their lineage. None had ever endured like this. None had ever forced her to reconsider the meaning of a duel. She felt a flicker of doubt, a feeling foreign and uncomfortable. The crowd, sensing the shift, erupted into whispers and cheers, the energy of the arena electric. Humans had always been underestimated, often dismissed as weak and fragile. Today, that assumption was being shattered. The princess, beautiful, skilled, and deadly, was facing something she could not fully comprehend. A human who refused to be broken, a human who fought not with raw power but with endurance, intelligence, and courage. Elias stood tall, sweat on his brow, but his eyes clear and focused. He was not reckless, nor overconfident. He simply understood something that few in the arena had ever realized. Survival was more than strength, and endurance was more powerful than brute force. As Saranya regained her stance, she realized the duel was far from over. And yet, a small part of her knew something that she had never admitted to herself. This human, small and unassuming, was not someone she could defeat as easily as she thought. He had already lasted longer than anyone expected, and the first minute, or even 10, would not determine the outcome. The arena fell into a tense hush, every spectator watching, waiting. The duel had begun as a spectacle, a show of superiority, but it had become something else entirely. It had become a story of human resilience, of the unpredictable strength that comes from determination and intelligence, and of a princess who had yet to learn the lesson of humility in the face of a species she had never truly understood. And in that moment, as the human and the princess circled each other, ready to continue, the galaxy began to whisper the first words of what would soon become legend. Perhaps humanity was not just another species to conquer. Perhaps humanity was something altogether different, and far more dangerous than anyone had ever imagined. The duel had entered its second phase, and the atmosphere in the arena had shifted from excitement to sheer anticipation. Every spectator, from the farthest balcony to the front row, leaned forward, eyes glued to the combatants. The human, Captain Elias Riker, stood tall and composed, despite the princess's relentless attacks that had pushed him to the edge. Princess Saranya's confidence, once unshakable, now wavered, though she would never admit it aloud. The crowd expected her to end the match swiftly. She had faced hundreds of opponents like this, each overconfident, each unprepared, and each had fallen within moments. Yet the human before her moved differently. He was not as fast as she, not as strong, and certainly not trained in the lethal martial arts of the Vorthian Empire. But there was a strange quality to him, calm, focused, and unflinching, a presence that made her hesitate more than once. Saranya circled the platform, scanning the human's every move. She launched a series of strikes, quick, sharp, and precise. Each one was designed to test his defenses, to find an opening she could exploit. Elias met them all with minimal motion, often shifting his weight just enough to avoid the worst of the attacks. He used her momentum against her, redirecting force rather than confronting it directly. The audience gasped repeatedly, unable to follow every subtle motion, yet feeling the impact of each near miss. Minutes passed, each one building the tension like a tightening coil. Saranya's strikes became more complex, combining high-speed kicks, sweeping motions, and sudden lunges. Elias ducked, sidestepped, and shifted, conserving his energy while observing her movements closely. He did not attack aggressively. Instead, he allowed the princess to exhaust herself slightly with every strike, learning her rhythm, predicting her next move. Interesting, Saranya muttered under her breath, a rare tone of respect in her voice. Not just strong, patient, clever even. He had seen warriors like her before in simulations and training, but this was real. The difference between theory and reality was often deadly, and he was determined to survive every moment. The princess tried a new approach, a feint combined with a spinning strike intended to end the duel instantly. She had used this move countless times, and opponents often failed to recognize it until it was too late. But Elias noticed the slight shift in her stance, the subtle alignment of her shoulders, the fraction of a second before her blade swung. Timing his movement perfectly, he sidestepped, allowing her strike to sail past harmlessly. Then, using her overextended position, he nudged her lightly, not hard enough to harm, but just enough to force her to regain balance. The crowd erupted. Whispers and cheers filled the arena. No human had ever endured so many attacks from Princess Saranya, and the fact that he could survive them without a weapon of his own fascinated everyone. The princess, though frustrated, could not help but admire his technique. He was not relying on brute strength. He was adapting, learning, and responding in real time. Saranya changed tactics. Instead of attacking immediately, she created distance, circling Elias, looking for an opening while keeping him under constant threat. Elias mirrored her movements, staying just far enough to avoid her reach but close enough to react instantly. Every step he took was measured, conserving energy while observing patterns. Then Saranya feinted again, this time lowering her stance slightly, baiting him. Elias did not fall for it. Instead, he used her lowered stance to predict the direction of her next strike, stepping to the side just as she lunged. The force of her momentum carried her past him again, leaving her slightly off balance. Elias' hand grazed her shoulder as he moved, a small contact, but enough to unnerve her. Her eyes widened. The human was reading her movements, anticipating her strikes, turning her strengths into vulnerabilities. She had never faced an opponent who could do this so calmly, so efficiently, and yet without aggression. Each failed strike made her more alert, more cautious, and beneath her pride more frustrated. Elias' mind was calm. He had trained for moments like this, though not in alien arenas, not against warriors with powers and reflexes like Saranya. Humans had learned through hardship, battle, and survival. They had learned patience, and patience was now his greatest weapon. The princess attacked with a series of rapid strikes, combining hand-to-hand maneuvers with blade swings that would have defeated most opponents. Elias blocked some, dodged others, and, when necessary, used her own momentum to evade. He was not reckless. He did not try to overpower her. He survived through adaptability, intelligence, and precise timing. The audience began to whisper about humanity's unique combat style. It was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Minutes became hours in sensation, though the actual time was only a few. Sweat dripped from Saranya's brow. She was fast, strong, and trained to perfection, yet she found herself matching Ilia's endurance with every movement. Her strikes were no longer effortless. They required concentration, calculation, and constant adjustment. Ilias, though exhausted, showed no signs of panic. His breathing was controlled, his stance relaxed but ready. Every movement he made was deliberate. He was not trying to destroy the princess immediately. He was surviving, learning, and waiting for an opportunity to exploit. The princess realized something profound. Humans fought differently. Other species relied on raw strength, speed, or brute force. Humans relied on patience, adaptability, and intelligence. They observed, learned, and endured. And now, standing before her, Ilias embodied all those qualities. For the first time, Saranya hesitated before attacking. She had underestimated her opponent, assuming that his lack of speed and strength meant he was easy prey. Yet here he was, not just surviving but thriving under her relentless assaults. She could feel the crowd's energy shift. Their expectation of a swift victory was gone, replaced by astonishment, fascination, and a hint of fear. The duel took a new turn when Ilias made a deliberate move toward the arena's edge. The princess lunged forward, intending to strike decisively, but he anticipated her attack perfectly. Using the momentum of her strike, he pivoted, sending her past him and forcing her to regain balance quickly. It was a small movement, yet it spoke volumes. The human was not reckless. He was strategic, turning the arena itself into a weapon. Saranya froze for a brief moment, a rare pause in her usually fluid movements. She had faced opponents of all kinds, warriors, assassins, even mercenaries trained from childhood. But none had endured like this. None had anticipated her every move. For the first time, she felt a flicker of doubt, a thought that was foreign and unwelcome. Perhaps she had misjudged humanity. The crowd sensed the tension. Their excitement had shifted to suspense. Everyone in the arena, from seasoned warriors to casual spectators, realized that this was not just a duel. It was a battle of wits, endurance, and strategy. The human, unassuming and seemingly ordinary, had become the center of attention, drawing awe from aliens who had never respected humanity before. Minutes stretched into an unspoken eternity. Sweat poured from Saranya, yet her movements remained sharp, precise, and controlled. Ilias, though equally fatigued, maintained his calm. Every step, every movement, every breath was deliberate. He had not been thrown off by her skill, nor by the sheer force of her attacks. He had endured, survived, and adapted. The princess struck again, a rapid combination of kicks and strikes designed to overwhelm. Ilias moved with measured precision, stepping aside, redirecting energy, and maintaining balance. His human endurance, though not flashy, proved effective. Each time she attacked, he survived. Each time he survived, he learned. Saranya began to feel the limits of her confidence. Her strikes, though powerful, were no longer decisive. The human was enduring, calculating, and responding. And as she adjusted her attacks, she realized something she could not ignore. This human was teaching her something, even without speaking. He was showing her that strength was not only about power. It was about endurance, strategy, and the willingness to adapt. The crowd watched in stunned silence. The human had lasted far longer than anyone predicted. They whispered about human resilience, their unique ability to endure, adapt, and survive. And in that whisper, a new respect began to grow. Humanity was no longer weak, fragile, or irrelevant. It was formidable. Ilias moved carefully, watching Saranya, anticipating her attacks, ready to survive whatever came next. He was patient, adaptive, and unyielding. And as the duel continued, it became clear that this was more than a test of skill. It was a demonstration of what humans could do when pushed to their limits. The princess, once confident and dismissive, now faced a choice. She could continue with brute force, risking exhaustion and failure, or she could respect the human's abilities and adjust. Pride fought with logic, but deep down she understood one undeniable truth. Elia's Riker was unlike anyone she had faced before. The first phase of the duel had ended, not with a victory but with a revelation. Humans were resilient. They endured. They adapted. And the galaxy, watching with bated breath, began to realize that humanity might be more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Saranya narrowed her eyes, the faintest trace of a smile forming. She would learn more. She would test him further. And Elias, standing tall and composed, was ready for whatever came next. The arena had become a stage for a battle unlike any the galaxy had ever witnessed. Spectators no longer whispered only in curiosity. They murmured in disbelief. A human, Captain Elias Riker, had survived far longer than anyone had predicted, standing unbroken against Princess Saranya, heir to the feared Vorthian Empire. The duel, once thought to be over in moments, now stretched into a lesson in endurance, patience, and the unpredictability of human resilience. Saranya's eyes sharpened as she studied him, her movements slower, more cautious than before. She had faced opponents faster, stronger, and more deadly than any human had a right to be. But Elias was different. He did not rely on brute force or flashy maneuvers. Every step, every shift of his weight, every subtle movement was deliberate. He was learning from her attacks, adapting in real time, and surviving in ways that challenged everything she believed about strength. The princess lunged forward, a flash of motion designed to overwhelm. Her strike should have ended the duel. Yet Elias moved with calm precision, sidestepping and letting her momentum carry her past him. He countered with a simple but effective maneuver, using her overextended position to force her to adjust quickly, maintaining balance without creating an opening for him to attack. It was a subtle move, almost imperceptible to the audience, but its effectiveness was undeniable. Saranya's eyes widened. The human was not merely surviving. He was shaping the fight in subtle ways that frustrated her. Every strike she threw had an effect, but it was never decisive. His endurance and adaptability created a strange rhythm, a push and pull, and she realized she was learning from him even as she attacked. Elias remained composed, breathing steadily despite the intensity of the duel. He was aware of her speed, her strength, her unpredictability, but he was not intimidated. Humans had been shaped by adversity, by constant challenges that demanded resilience. He carried that history in every calculated movement, every dodge, every moment of stillness that allowed him to survive. The crowd, previously focused on the princess's unmatched skill, now shifted their attention. Whispers of awe spread through the stands as they observed the human's performance. Other species, long dismissive of humanity, were beginning to see the truth. Humans were not weak. They were survivors, capable of enduring far beyond expectation, and Elias was the perfect example. Saranya struck again, combining a spinning kick with a forward lunge designed to end the duel immediately. Elias anticipated the strike, stepping aside with precision and letting her momentum carry her past him. He followed with a subtle push, not strong enough to harm but enough to disrupt her rhythm. Saranya paused for a split second, and in that instant, Elias observed her stance, her breathing, the micro-movements that revealed her next attack. He acted decisively, dodging and redirecting her force with careful timing. It was not brute strength, it was intelligence and understanding. The arena erupted with cheers and gasps, spectators recognizing that the human's endurance was more than physical. It was mental, strategic, and profoundly adaptive. Saranya's pride, once unshakable, began to waver. She had expected to dominate, to end the duel swiftly, to show the galaxy the futility of human combat ability. Instead, she faced an opponent who refused to break, who absorbed her most precise attacks, and who forced her to reconsider her every move. The princess adjusted her strategy. She created distance, moving around the platform with careful precision. Elias mirrored her, keeping close enough to respond instantly but far enough to avoid a direct strike. Each step he took was measured, conserving energy, observing patterns, and adapting to her attacks. This was no longer a simple duel. It was a test of endurance, intelligence, and adaptability. Saranya fainted again, a trick she had used countless times to defeat warriors far stronger than Ilia's. But he was ready. He anticipated the feint, moved accordingly, and allowed her momentum to carry her past him once more. The audience gasped. The human's ability to read her, to survive, and to respond had reached levels no one expected. Minutes passed, each filled with a tense rhythm of attack and evasion. Sweat dripped from Saranya's brow, yet her movements remained precise. Ilias, though equally fatigued, maintained his calm. Every shift, every adjustment, every step was deliberate. He was not reckless. He was strategic, letting her strength become an advantage he could survive rather than a weapon against him. Saranya realized slowly that humans fought differently. Other species relied on strength, speed, and aggression. Humans relied on observation, adaptation, and endurance. They learned from every strike, every movement, and every mistake. And here, standing before her, was proof that those qualities could be more dangerous than any physical weapon. The duel escalated. Saranya launched a series of attacks that would have defeated any ordinary opponent, combining her agility, speed, and lethal training. Ilias met them with calm precision, absorbing the blows without panic, sidestepping with grace, and learning from each encounter. The audience, captivated, realized that the human was not just surviving, he was thriving under impossible pressure. The princess struck with increasing intensity, aiming for a decisive blow. Ilias anticipated her strike and used a subtle shift of his weight to redirect the force, turning it aside without confrontation. The movement was small, almost invisible, but it disrupted her rhythm and forced her to adjust immediately. The crowd erupted, recognizing the intelligence behind the human's endurance. Saranya's frustration grew. She had faced warriors who relied on strength, cunning, or fear. None had adapted like this, none had endured so long, and none had forced her to reconsider her assumptions. For the first time, she felt a flicker of doubt. This human, small and seemingly fragile, was not what she expected. Ilias observed her, calm and steady, waiting for the right moment to act. He did not attack aggressively. He waited, adapting and surviving. His strategy was simple yet profound. Endure, observe, adapt, and exploit when the opportunity arose. This approach, born of human experience and resilience, was proving remarkably effective against the princess's superior strength and skill. Saranya lunged, combining speed, precision, and force. Ilias sidestepped with calculated timing, letting her momentum carry her past him. He nudged her lightly, just enough to disrupt her balance. The princess paused for a fraction of a second, a hesitation that revealed her next attack. Ilias acted, moving with controlled precision to avoid her strike while maintaining his balance. The arena erupted with excitement. The duel had transformed from a display of strength into a masterclass in human endurance and adaptability. Spectators realized that humans, long dismissed as weak and fragile, were capable of surviving far longer and learning faster than anyone had imagined. Saranya's movements became sharper, but more cautious. She was aware now that her attacks were not enough. The human was learning, adapting, and surviving. Pride and instinct told her to attack with all her strength, but reason whispered that patience, observation, and caution were necessary. She had underestimated her opponent, and now she faced a new reality. Humans were different, unpredictable, and dangerous in ways she had never anticipated. Ilias remained composed, breathing steadily, his movements precise. Every dodge, sidestep, and counter was deliberate. He was not trying to overpower the princess. He was surviving, learning, and waiting. His human resilience, patience, and intelligence allowed him to endure the relentless assault of a warrior trained to perfection. The duel entered its most intense phase. Saranya combined multiple strikes, blending hand-to-hand combat with weapon maneuvers that would have ended any ordinary opponent. Ilias met them all, moving with awareness and skill that belied his unassuming appearance. The audience watched in awe as the human endured attacks that should have been fatal. Minutes passed, sweat poured, and the air in the arena grew heavy with tension. Saranya realized that brute strength alone would not win this duel. Ilias was not just surviving, he was forcing her to adapt, to reconsider, and to respect the human capacity for endurance and intelligence. For the first time, Saranya hesitated mid-attack, a rare pause that reflected both respect and uncertainty. The human had survived far longer than expected. His calm composure, intelligence, and adaptability had turned what should have been a simple duel into a battle of strategy, patience, and resilience. Ilias moved carefully, predicting her next strike, adjusting his position and maintaining his balance. He did not need to attack aggressively. His survival, his ability to endure, was a statement in itself. The audience realized this. Humans were not weak. They were capable of enduring far beyond expectation, and Ilias Riker was living proof. The princess lunged again, but Ilias anticipated the strike and sidestepped, redirecting her momentum. She paused, realizing the human had turned her strength into an advantage for himself. The crowd erupted in cheers and gasps, witnessing a duel that transcended ordinary combat. Minutes became hours in sensation. The arena was filled with anticipation and awe. Saranya's pride was challenged. She had expected an easy victory, yet here she faced a human who refused to be defeated. He adapted, endured, and survived. The first half of the duel had ended with no clear victor. Ilias had survived, learned, and adapted. Saranya, though frustrated, had begun to respect him. She realized that humans were not only different, they were dangerous in ways the galaxy had never truly understood. And as the human and princess faced each other across the arena, the audience understood that this duel was not just a fight. It was a lesson in resilience, intelligence, and the unpredictable strength of humanity. The arena was quiet now, filled with tension that hung like electricity in the air. Princess Saranya's breaths came faster, though she tried to hide it beneath the disciplined movements of a seasoned warrior. Captain Ilias Riker stood opposite her, calm, composed, and steady, despite the relentless attacks that had pushed him to the edge. The duel had reached a new stage, no longer a simple display of strength or skill, but a battle of wits, endurance, and sheer determination. The audience could feel the difference. Where once they had come to witness a swift and spectacular victory for the princess, they now watched a struggle that tested every assumption about humanity. Humans were supposed to be fragile, slow, and weak compared to alien species trained from birth in combat. Yet here was Ilias, surviving every strike, learning from every move, and turning every advantage of the princess into a challenge she could not easily overcome. Saranya's mind raced. She had faced countless opponents, each arrogant in their own way, each believing they could match her. Some had been fast, others strong, a few clever, but none had endured. None had forced her to adjust her attacks, rethink her strategy, and respect their skill without even wielding extraordinary power. Ilias was rewriting every expectation she had ever held. She lunged forward, unleashing a series of strikes faster than any eye could follow. Her movements were fluid, precise, and deadly, a symphony of lethal intent. But Ilias did not panic. He had observed her style for long enough to recognize patterns in her attacks, the subtle shifts in her stance, the telltale signs before each strike. With careful precision, he sidestepped and dodged, redirecting her momentum when necessary and using her own speed against her. The audience gasped repeatedly. Each near miss, each successful dodge sent shockwaves through the stands. They had never seen a human move like this, never seen someone survive with such calm and calculated precision. Where other challengers would have faltered, Ilias adapted. Where others would have been struck down, he endured. Saranya paused, evaluating him. He was clever, yes, but also resilient. Every attack she launched seemed to teach him something, and he used that knowledge immediately. She had faced brilliant opponents before, but brilliance alone could not survive in the face of relentless adaptation and endurance. Ilias was alive not because he was stronger, but because he was patient, aware, and capable of turning her own skill against her. The princess adjusted her approach. She created more distance, circling the human carefully. Elias mirrored her, keeping the right spacing, moving just enough to avoid her strikes but staying close enough to react. They moved like predators, testing, probing, analyzing each other. The fight had become a contest of minds as much as bodies. Saranya fainted, a deceptive move she had perfected over years of training. Many champions had fallen to it instantly. Elias noticed the slight shift in her shoulders, the tension in her legs, and the way her eyes flicked toward a corner of the arena. He sidestepped smoothly, letting her momentum carry her past him, and subtly disrupted her balance with a small push. She stumbled slightly, caught herself, and recovered instantly, but the hesitation was enough. The crowd erupted. No human had ever survived such precision, such force, and such relentless attack. For the first time, they were not just watching a duel, they were witnessing a lesson in human resilience, strategy, and intelligence. Saranya's pride flared. She had underestimated him. Every instinct she had told her that this human should have been defeated long ago. Yet here he was, learning, adapting, surviving, and forcing her to adjust in ways she had never expected. It was frustrating, infuriating even, yet she could not deny the truth. Elias Riker was extraordinary. She attacked with renewed intensity, combining her most powerful strikes into a relentless assault. Elias moved with calm precision, dodging and redirecting, conserving energy while enduring. He was not reckless, nor overly cautious. Every movement was deliberate. He did not attempt to overpower her. He focused on surviving, learning, and waiting for the moment when his endurance and understanding would give him an opening. Minutes passed, each filled with a tense rhythm of action and reaction. Saranya's strikes were powerful, precise, and elegant, yet Elias matched them with careful timing and adaptability. The crowd could see the subtle dance unfolding, the interplay of strength, intelligence, and resilience. The duel was no longer simply about who could strike harder or faster. It was about who could endure, adapt, and remain unbroken under impossible pressure. Saranya's frustration grew. She had expected domination, a swift demonstration of power. Instead, she found herself matching the human step for step, struggling to land a decisive blow. Each attack that failed chipped away at her certainty, forcing her to reevaluate her strategy constantly. For the first time, she was unsure if her strength alone would be enough to win. Elias, meanwhile, remained composed. His breathing was steady, his stance strong. He had faced challenges before, though never like this, and he understood something vital. Endurance, observation, and intelligence could overcome even the most formidable force. He absorbed her strikes, learned from them, and used that knowledge to survive. Every movement, every shift of weight, every tiny adjustment was part of a strategy that had one goal: endure and outlast. The princess tried a new tactic. She combined feints, speed, and force in a way she had never used before. Elias responded with calm precision, dodging, parrying, and adapting in real time. The audience was on the edge of their seats, captivated by the spectacle. They saw the difference in style: brute force versus adaptability, arrogance versus endurance, raw skill versus intelligent persistence. Minutes turned into a long, tense stretch. Saranya's pride fought with reason. She wanted to dominate, to end the duel in victory, yet she could not ignore the truth before her eyes. The human endured, he adapted, and he survived. His patience, intelligence, and resilience had turned what should have been a quick defeat into a challenge she had never encountered. Elias observed her carefully. He did not attack aggressively, for he knew that patience and understanding were more powerful than reckless force. He studied her stance, her breathing, the subtle patterns in her attacks. He had learned more about her style than she had realized, and every moment of survival gave him more insight. Saranya struck again, with a combination of speed, precision, and strength designed to overwhelm. Elias dodged and redirected, turning her energy against her while maintaining balance and control. He did not need to attack to make a point. His survival was proof enough of his ability. The crowd erupted repeatedly, astonished at his resilience. The princess realized something profound. Strength alone was not enough to win this duel. Elias was teaching her a lesson without speaking. He was showing her that survival depended not on muscle or speed alone, but on patience, intelligence, and the ability to adapt. Every failed attack forced her to rethink, to adjust, to acknowledge that humans were capable of far more than she had imagined. Saranya lunged with incredible speed, aiming for a decisive blow. Elias anticipated her move perfectly, sidestepping and redirecting her momentum. She paused, breathing hard, realizing that this human had turned her own skill into a tool for survival rather than defeat. The audience gasped in awe. Humans, long underestimated, were capable of endurance, adaptability, and intelligence that rivaled the finest warriors of the galaxy. The duel escalated further. Saranya combined rapid strikes with unexpected feints, weapon maneuvers, and acrobatic attacks. Elias matched her, dodging, redirecting, and surviving with careful precision. Each moment of endurance reinforced his strategy: observe, adapt, survive, and endure. The audience began to see the full scope of human potential. Saranya's pride battled with respect. She had underestimated this human, assuming that he would be weak, slow, and easy to defeat. Instead, she found herself challenged, frustrated, and forced to adapt. For the first time, she faced a being whose resilience and intelligence matched, if not surpassed, her own skill. Elias, despite fatigue, remained composed. His calm breathing, steady movements, and precise adjustments allowed him to endure. He did not need to strike with force. His ability to survive, to adapt, and to outlast was a weapon in itself. The crowd watched, captivated, as the human demonstrated that endurance, intelligence, and patience could rival even the most lethal warrior in the galaxy. Saranya struck once more, her movements a blur of speed and power. Elias anticipated the attack, sidestepping and redirecting her energy to maintain balance. The princess froze for a fraction of a second, realizing that she had underestimated him. His calm, his intelligence, and his ability to endure had turned what should have been a simple duel into a battle of wits and strategy. The crowd erupted, recognizing the human's extraordinary abilities. They had come expecting a swift victory for the princess, but instead they witnessed something far greater: a demonstration of human endurance, intelligence, and adaptability that challenged every assumption about the species. Saranya, breathing heavily, realized the duel had changed her perspective. Humans were not weak, fragile, or incapable. Elias had shown her that survival depended on intelligence, endurance, and adaptability. He had endured her relentless assault, adapted to her strategies, and forced her to respect his abilities. The duel continued, both fighters aware that the outcome was no longer predictable. Elias stood, calm and composed, ready for whatever the princess would throw at him next. Saranya, frustrated yet impressed, prepared for another attack, knowing that brute force alone would no longer guarantee victory. And as the audience watched in stunned silence, the lesson became clear. Humans, underestimated for centuries, were capable of resilience, intelligence, and endurance that rivaled the greatest warriors of the galaxy. Elias Riker had survived against impossible odds, and the princess, for the first time, knew that she had met an opponent unlike any other. The arena had grown tense beyond anything the spectators had ever experienced. Every eye, human and alien alike, was fixed on the duel. Princess Saranya and Captain Elias Riker faced each other across the combat platform, both breathing steadily, both aware that this phase of the fight would decide more than just victory. It would decide respect, reputation, and the understanding of what humans were truly capable of. Saranya's movements had changed since the beginning of the duel. Once confident and daring, now cautious, measured, and almost wary. She had underestimated her opponent, as many had before, but Elias had endured, adapted, and survived in ways that had forced her to rethink every assumption she held about strength, combat, and intelligence. Her strikes were precise, powerful, but tempered now with strategy and respect. Elias stood his ground, muscles coiled and ready, his mind sharp and clear. He was tired, yes, fatigue tugged at his body, but his resolve was unwavering. Every dodge, every adjustment, every small shift of his weight was deliberate. He had survived the relentless attacks of one of the deadliest warriors in the galaxy, not through sheer power, but through intelligence, observation, and endurance. He had turned what could have been defeat into survival, and survival into understanding. The crowd held its collective breath. No one knew what would happen next. They had witnessed a duel that defied expectation, challenged assumption, and demonstrated human potential in ways that were extraordinary. And now, as the final phase began, the tension in the arena was palpable. Saranya lunged forward, faster than ever, combining a series of rapid strikes with calculated feints designed to catch Elias off guard. Her movements were fluid, precise, and deadly. The audience gasped as her strikes threatened to overwhelm him. Yet Elias, calm and aware, anticipated her attacks. He sidestepped, deflected, and used her momentum to his advantage. For every strike she delivered, he survived, adapting instantly, learning more about her style with each exchange. The princess's eyes narrowed. She had faced many skilled opponents, but none had endured like this. Each movement of Elias was not just survival, it was understanding. He was not reckless, not aggressive beyond reason. He was patient, intelligent, and methodical. She realized with a shock she could not hide that he was turning her own strength and skill against her. Elias recognized the subtle shifts in her stance. The tiny adjustments she made to maintain balance after each strike were clues, signals he had learned to read. He waited for the right moment, observing and calculating, aware that one misstep could cost him the duel, and perhaps more. Saranya changed tactics. She moved with unpredictability, trying to break his rhythm, to strike in ways that would test both endurance and wit. She attacked from unusual angles, combined low strikes with sudden high kicks, and varied her speed to confuse him. But Elias adapted. He had survived her relentless assault so far. He had learned to read her movements, to predict her attacks, and to respond with precision. The audience was on the edge of their seats. They had witnessed humans underestimated for centuries, dismissed as fragile and weak. Now they saw one standing against a champion, not only surviving but challenging her in ways that forced her to reconsider everything she knew about strength. Whispers of awe and disbelief filled the stands. This was not just a duel, it was a revelation. Saranya lunged again, a move designed to end the fight in a single decisive strike. Elias anticipated her action perfectly. He sidestepped, using the force of her attack to pivot behind her. In that instant, he created space, a small opening that could shift the balance of the duel. He did not strike immediately. He waited, assessing her next movement, maintaining his calm focus. The princess realized too late what had happened. The human had turned her strength against her without using force, without aggression. She had misjudged him repeatedly, assuming that raw power would always triumph. And now, standing mere moments from an opening, she understood something vital. This human was not like any opponent she had faced. Elias acted, not with reckless force but with precise timing. He shifted, guided her momentum, and created a momentary advantage. The crowd erupted, cheering for the human who had survived impossible odds. They had seen many champions fall, but never someone endure, adapt, and persist like this. Humanity had earned respect, not through sheer power, but through resilience, intelligence, and endurance. Saranya recovered quickly, her pride intact but tempered by respect. She understood that brute force alone would not win this duel. Elias had survived her greatest attacks, learned from them, and adapted to every challenge she presented. The princess realized that she faced a human who embodied patience, strategy, and endurance, the qualities that made humans unique, formidable, and unpredictable. The duel continued, both fighters moving with incredible speed and precision. Saranya combined her deadly skill with calculated restraint, testing the human's limits. Elias met each attack with careful awareness, dodging, adapting, and surviving. Every strike he endured, every adjustment he made reinforced his position. Survival, intelligence, and adaptability could rival raw strength. Minutes passed like hours. Sweat poured, muscles burned, and the intensity of the duel reached its peak. The audience could feel the energy, the tension, the history being written before their eyes. Humans had long been underestimated. Now they were witnessing the proof of what humanity could endure, learn, and achieve. Saranya's strikes became sharper, faster, yet less reckless. She had learned to respect her opponent's abilities. Elias remained calm, his movements deliberate, his focus unwavering. He was not only surviving, he was demonstrating the strength of human intelligence and adaptability under pressure. The princess fainted, attempting to force him into a mistake. Elias anticipated the feint, adjusted instantly, and used her momentum to create space between them. He did not attack aggressively. He did not need to. His survival, his ability to endure, was a statement in itself. The audience recognized it, erupting in applause and cheers. Humanity had shown its strength in a way that transcended simple combat. Saranya struck again, combining speed, power, and strategy. Elias responded with precision, dodging, adapting, and surviving. The duel had become a balance of skill, endurance, and intelligence. Neither fighter sought reckless victory. Both understood the stakes and the lessons embedded in every movement. The princess paused briefly, breathing heavily, recognizing the human's incredible capability. She had underestimated him repeatedly, but now she could not. Elias Riker was not just surviving, he was teaching her, forcing her to acknowledge human strength, resilience, and intelligence. The audience watched in awe. They had expected a quick victory for the princess, but now they saw a human endure, adapt, and challenge one of the galaxy's deadliest warriors. Humanity, long dismissed, had earned respect in ways that could never be measured by speed, strength, or size. Elias embodied endurance, intelligence, and patience, the qualities that defined his species. Saranya lunged once more, powerful, precise, and deadly. Elias anticipated the strike, sidestepping and redirecting her momentum. He created a small opening enough to shift the balance, and yet he did not attack recklessly. Instead, he stood firm, demonstrating calm confidence that radiated through the arena. The princess realized fully that this human was extraordinary, unlike any opponent she had faced. Minutes stretched, the duel reaching its crescendo. Both fighters were aware of every movement, every breath, every subtle shift. Saranya's strikes became measured, strategic, respectful of the human's endurance. Elias remained calm, poised, and ready, demonstrating that intelligence, patience, and adaptability could rival raw strength and lethal skill. The audience erupted in awe. They witnessed not just a duel but a demonstration of human potential. Humans, long underestimated, had survived and endured in ways that challenged the galaxy's assumptions. Elias Riker had become a symbol of resilience, intelligence, and adaptability. Saranya finally lowered her stance slightly, acknowledging the truth she could no longer deny. She had underestimated humanity, and she would never make that mistake again. Elias stood, calm, composed, and victorious not just in skill, but in endurance, intelligence, and spirit. The duel ended not with destruction but with understanding. The princess, breathing heavily, nodded in respect. Elias had proven that humans could endure, adapt, and survive against impossible odds. The crowd erupted, cheering for both fighters, but especially for the human who had challenged the galaxy's expectations. Elias Riker returned to his people, proud but humble. He had not won through brute force or aggression. He had survived, adapted, and endured. Humanity had demonstrated its strength, and the galaxy had taken notice. The princess addressed her people later, her voice clear and measured. She admitted what she had learned. Humans were not weak. They were resilient, intelligent, and capable of facing challenges that other species might crumble before. Underestimating humanity had been a mistake, one that would not be repeated. The duel became legend. Across star systems, the story of the human who survived against Princess Serania spread. Humanity's reputation changed, not because of violence, but because of endurance, intelligence, and courage. Elias Riker had become more than a champion. He was a symbol of what humans could achieve, a reminder that strength came in many forms, and that the galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. And in that moment, the galaxy learned a lesson that would echo for generations. True strength was not always measured by power alone, but by endurance, adaptability, and the will to survive. Elias Riker had shown the universe that humans were formidable, unpredictable, and worthy of respect. The story of the duel ended, but the legend of humanity had only begun.